Commander Rena Threll stood at the bridge of the Terran vessel, boundless wonder, her dark eyes fixed on the swirling patterns of deep space before her. The exploratory ship's quantum sensors had detected something unusual, a massive fleet of vessels unlike anything in their database, their hulls seeming to bend light itself around them. Analysis complete, Commander, Lieutenant Kai reported from his station, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. We're looking at approximately 30 vessels, all showing energy signatures that exceed our previous encounters by several orders of magnitude. Rena allowed herself a small smile. The Terran Exploration Initiative had prepared them for first contact scenarios, but nothing quite like this. Their ship, while impressive by Earth standards, looked like a child's toy compared to the approaching fleet. Open communications on all standard frequencies, she ordered, straightening her midnight blue uniform. Let's introduce ourselves properly. The response came not as words, but as a wave of energy that swept through their ship, analyzing every molecule, every circuit. The crew tensed, but Rena remained calm, even as the ship's AI reported multiple scanning attempts. Fascinating approach to saying hello, she muttered, then addressed her crew. Stand down defensive systems. They're just curious. The main viewscreen flickered to life, revealing a tall, ethereal being with iridescent skin and eyes that seemed to contain galaxies. High Commander Zix of the Zexarian Ascendancy looked down at the human crew with an expression that might have been confusion or disdain. It was hard to tell with alien facial features. Your vessel traverses forbidden space, Zix announced, their voice resonating with harmonics that made the ship's hull vibrate. Explain your presence or face immediate quantum dissolution. Rena leaned back in her command chair, crossing her legs casually. Forbidden by whom, exactly? Last I checked, this sector was marked as neutral territory under the Rigel Accords. A ripple of what might have been surprise passed across Zix's features. The Rigel Accords are a myth, a story told by lesser species. We are the Zexarian Ascendancy. We have ruled these stars since your kind first looked up at the night sky. Oh, excellent. Rena's enthusiasm seemed to catch the alien commander off guard. We've been hoping to make contact with the Zexarians. Your quantum architecture is absolutely fascinating. Our scientists have been studying the ruins on Proxima B for years. The mention of the ruins caused visible agitation among the Zexarian bridge crew. You have accessed the ancient sites? Zix demanded. Accessed them? We've been living in them, Rena replied cheerfully. Turns out they make excellent research facilities once you figure out how to power them up. Would you like to see our modifications? We've made some interesting improvements to the original designs. The silence that followed was deafening. The Zexarians had spent centuries treating their ancestors' technology as sacred artifacts, untouchable and mysterious. These humans had not only touched them but improved them. Commander, Kai whispered urgently, their weapons systems are powering up. Rena nodded, still smiling. High Commander Zix, before you do anything hasty, you might want to take a closer look at our hull composition. Particularly the quantum resonance pattern. Another scan washed over the boundless wonder, followed by shocked murmurs from the Zexarian bridge. Their ship's hull was interwoven with the same mysterious alloys found in their most sacred sites, but altered, refined, enhanced. This is impossible, Zix declared, but there was uncertainty in their harmonics now. No species could have mastered the ancient technologies so quickly. Oh, we haven't mastered anything, Rena replied, standing up and walking closer to the view screen. We're still learning. That's why we're out here. Humanity doesn't believe in treating technology as sacred, we believe in understanding it, improving it, sharing it. Speaking of which, we've noticed some inefficiencies in your fleet's quantum matrix alignment. We'd be happy to share our research on that. The offer, delivered so casually, sent shockwaves through the Zexarian command staff. Their entire civilization was built around the premise that they were the only ones worthy of their ancestors' legacy. These humans weren't just challenging that belief, they were offering to help improve it. You dare to suggest our technology is inefficient? Zix's voice carried both outrage and fascination. Everyone's technology has room for improvement, Rena said diplomatically. That's what makes the universe interesting. Now, shall we discuss this like curious explorers, or do you still want to quantum dissolve us? The tension on both bridges was thick enough to cut with a knife. Then, surprisingly, High Commander Zix did something no human had ever seen a Zexarian do before. They laughed. Your species is either incredibly brave or impossibly foolish, Zix declared. Perhaps both. Very well, Commander Threll. Show us these improvements of yours. And so began one of the most unusual first contact scenarios in human history, not with warfare or formal diplomacy, but with a technical discussion about quantum mechanics that would eventually reshape the galaxy itself. The following days aboard the Boundless Wonder proved to be an exercise in controlled chaos. The Zexarians had accepted Rena's invitation to send a scientific delegation, though their approach to scientific exchange was unlike anything the human crew had anticipated. They're doing it again, Lieutenant Kai reported, watching as the Zexarian scientists levitated through the engineering bay, their iridescent robes flowing in non-existent wind. Every time we try to show them the quantum drive specifications, they start chanting. Chief Engineer Jasper Rodriguez scratched his head, watching the aliens perform what appeared to be a ceremonial dance around the engine core. I mean, their method is unique, but you can't argue with the results. Look at these readings. He was right. Despite what the human crew saw as ritual nonsense, the Zexarians were somehow optimizing the ship's quantum field in ways that defied conventional physics. Their chants, it turned out, created precise harmonic frequencies that resonated with the quantum field itself. Meanwhile, on the Zexarian flagship, the Eternal Harmony, High Commander Zix was facing their own cultural crisis. The human engineers they'd allowed aboard were treating sacred technology with casual familiarity, making modifications without performing the proper ceremonies, and worst of all, they were getting results. They replaced a quantum core resonator with something they call a coffee maker, First Sage VYX reported, their luminescent patterns showing clear distress. And somehow, it improved efficiency by 30%. Zix stared at the efficiency reports, their multiple eyes blinking in sequence. How is this possible? They show no reverence, no understanding of the spiritual harmonics, yet they achieve what our most devoted scholars could not. The situation reached a turning point when Dr. Nadia Santos, the Wonder's quantum physicist, discovered something extraordinary in the Zexarian engine room. She'd been permitted to observe their maintenance rituals, but instead of maintaining the respectful silence expected of outsiders, she started laughing. "These aren't religious ceremonies at all," she exclaimed, pulling out her quantum scanner. "The movements, the chants, they're creating standing waves in the quantum field. It's mathematical. It's brilliant." The Zexarian priests were initially outraged, but as Dr. Santos began to explain what she'd seen, translating their ancient rituals into pure mathematics, something remarkable happened. First Sage VYX's patterns began to pulse with excitement. "You mean," they asked slowly, "our most sacred traditions are actually precise scientific formulae?" "Passed down through generations," Nadia confirmed, her dark eyes sparkling. "Your ancestors must have encoded their scientific knowledge into these rituals to preserve it. It's not just ceremony, it's an operating manual." This revelation sent shockwaves through both crews. The humans began to see the beauty and precision in what they dismissed as mere superstition, while the Zexarians started to understand their heritage in an entirely new light. Commander Rena was in her quarters, reviewing the day's reports, when her AI assistant announced an urgent communication from High Commander Zix. On screen, the Zexarian leader appeared more animated than she'd ever seen them. "Commander Threll," Zix began, their voice harmonizing with excitement, "We've made a grave error in our initial assessment of your species. We thought you were desecrating our sacred knowledge, but you've helped us understand it in ways we never imagined." Rena smiled diplomatically. "And we've learned that what we dismissed as ritual actually contains profound scientific principles. Perhaps both our species had pieces of the same puzzle?" "Indeed," Zix agreed. "Which makes what we've discovered all the more troubling." Their patterns shifted to darker hues. "Our combined understanding of the quantum harmonics has revealed something hidden in the background radiation of this sector. Something our ancestors may have been warning us about." Before Rena could respond, both ships' quantum sensors began screaming alerts. The space between the fleets seemed to ripple, as if reality itself was being torn apart. Multiple quantum anomalies detected. Kai's voice came through the comm, "Whatever they are, they're big, and they're not natural." Rena watched as massive shapes began to emerge from the quantum distortions, ancient vessels of impossible design, their surfaces crawling with what looked like living metal. In that moment, she realized why the Zexarians' ancestors had encoded their knowledge in ritual, and why humanity's drive to understand and improve that knowledge was equally important. They weren't going to survive what was coming unless both approaches worked together. "High Commander," she said, her voice steady despite the growing chaos, "I believe it's time to put our combined knowledge to the test." Zix's patterns pulsed in agreement. "Indeed, Commander Threll. It seems our ancestors left us their knowledge for exactly this moment." The ancient ships continued to emerge, their presence distorting the very fabric of spacetime around them. The true test of human ingenuity and Zexarian wisdom was about to begin. 3 minutes until quantum breach. Lieutenant Kai's voice cut through the chaos on the Boundless Wonders bridge. The ancient vessels, now numbering in the dozens, had surrounded both the human and Zexarian fleets, their living metal hulls pulsing with otherworldly energy. Commander Rena Threll watched as reality warped around these massive intruders, their very presence seeming to corrupt the fabric of spacetime. "Dr. Santos, what are we looking at?" Nadia's fingers flew across her console as she analyzed the readings. "They're like nothing we've ever seen. The quantum signature suggests they're billions of years old, but they're evolving. The living metal is adapting to our presence in real time." On the main viewer, High Commander Zix's image flickered as quantum interference grew stronger. "The prophecy of the void," they said, their patterns shifting to deep violet, a sign of ancient terror in Zexarian culture. "Our most sacred texts speak of entities that exist beyond normal spacetime, who would one day return to reclaim the galaxy." "Less prophecy, more solutions," Rena replied, gripping her chair as another quantum shock wave rocked the ship. "What do your texts say about fighting them?" First Sage VYX appeared beside Zix, their patterns pulsing rapidly. "The ancient rituals, they were never just about maintaining our technology. They were preparations for this moment." The sage began moving their hands in complex patterns, creating harmonic resonances that made the viewer shimmer. Dr. Santos suddenly straightened in her chair. "Commander." The sage's movements, they're creating quantum interference patterns that match the ancient ship's frequencies. "We might be able to use this." Before Rena could respond, the largest of the ancient vessels fired. The beam wasn't energy or matter, it was a tear in reality itself, heading straight for the Zexarian flagship. But at the last moment, something extraordinary happened. Chief Engineer Rodriguez's voice came through the comm, filled with excitement. "Commander. Remember that coffee maker modification? It's not just improving efficiency, it's generating a quantum harmonic field similar to the Zexarian chants. I think we can do it." Rena ordered, understanding immediately. The improvised human technology combined with precise Zexarian harmonics created a shield of stable spacetime around both fleets. The reality-tearing beam dispersed against it, like water hitting a rock. "Well, that's interesting," Rena mused, watching the ancient ships pause in their attack. They didn't expect us to do that. Impossible. One of the Zexarian priests exclaimed. The harmonics require centuries of training to master, yet these humans replicated their effect with a beverage maker? That's humanity for you, Kai grinned. We see something amazing and think, how can we do that with coffee? But their victory was short-lived. The ancient vessels began to pulse in unison, their living metal surfaces rippling as they adapted to the defensive strategy. New appendages grew from their hulls, each one aimed at the combined fleet. They're learning, Dr. Santos warned. The coffee maker trick won't work twice. High Commander Zix's patterns shifted to a determined goal. Then we must learn faster. Commander Threll, I propose something unprecedented. Our scholars have spent generations memorizing the ancient harmonics. Your people have shown remarkable ability to understand and modify these principles. If we work together. Full technological and cultural exchange, Rena finished, nodding. No holds barred, no secrets kept. It's not just about combining our knowledge, it's about creating something new. The next hour was unlike anything either species had experienced. Zexarian priests worked alongside human engineers, teaching them the precise movements and frequencies of their quantum harmonics. Human scientists helped the Zexarians understand the underlying principles of their own sacred technology, leading to modifications that would have been considered heretical days earlier. Look at these readings, Dr. Santos said, working with First Sage VYX. The harmonics aren't just about quantum field manipulation, they're a form of communication. The ancients weren't just leaving us technology, they were trying to tell us something. The sage's patterns pulsed with revelation. The prophecy speaks of a test, not just of our strength, but of our wisdom. Only those who unite the sacred and the profound may face the darkness between spaces. Another blast from the ancient ships rocked both fleets, but this time, something was different. The combined human-Zexarian shield held, and more than that, it resonated with the attack, creating new patterns in the quantum field. They're not just attacking, Rena realized, watching the patterns form. They're waiting for us to answer. High Commander Zix's patterns shifted to a color humans had never seen before. Then let us answer together, Commander Threll. Let us show these ancients what happens when wisdom and innovation unite. As both fleets prepared for their coordinated response, Rena couldn't help but smile. Humanity had come to space looking for wonders and challenges. They'd found both, along with something even more valuable, the understanding that sometimes the greatest discoveries come from learning to see the universe through another's eyes. The ancient ships began charging for another attack, but this time, the combined fleet was ready. The true test was about to begin. The space between realities shimmered as the ancient vessels launched their most powerful attack yet. But this time, the combined human-Zexarian fleet was ready. The Boundless Wonder's modified engines hummed in perfect harmony with the Eternal Harmony's quantum field generators, creating something entirely new in the process. Synchronization at 98%, Dr. Santos announced, her hands moving through the air in perfect sync with First Sage VYX's patterns. The human scientist had learned more about quantum harmonics in the past few hours than she had in years of study, while the Zexarian priest had embraced human intuition and improvisation with surprising enthusiasm. Commander Rena Threll watched as golden threads of quantum energy wove between the ships of both fleets, forming a complex web of interconnected fields. Status of the translation matrix? The ancient ship's communications are becoming clearer, Lieutenant Kai reported. They're not just testing our defenses, they're transmitting vast amounts of data through their attacks. It's like, they're teaching us while trying to destroy us. High Commander Zix's image appeared on the main viewer, their patterns shifting through colors that reflected both excitement and concern. We are beginning to decode their primary directive. It appears our ancestors didn't just leave us technology, they left us a challenge. One that could only be solved when different species learned to work together. The revelation was interrupted by a massive quantum surge from the ancient fleet. Their living metal hulls had reconfigured into shapes that defied Euclidean geometry, creating weapons that attacked not just matter and energy, but the fundamental forces that held reality together. Incoming temporal shear. Chief Engineer Rodriguez shouted over the comm, "They're trying to push us out of normal spacetime." But something unexpected happened and the temporal attack hit their combined defenses. Instead of attempting to tear them apart, it created a series of complex quantum equations in the space between the fleets, equations that merged Zexarian harmonics with human mathematical principles. "It's a test of synthesis," Dr. Santos breathed, watching the patterns form. "They're not trying to destroy us, they're forcing us to evolve." First Sage VYX's patterns pulsed with sudden understanding. The prophecies spoke of this: when the children of different stars learn to sing as one, the gates of higher understanding shall open. We thought it was metaphorical. "Nothing about this situation is metaphorical," Rena observed, watching as another wave of quantum energy approached. Suggestions? The answer came from an unexpected source. One of the younger human engineers, working with a team of Zexarian acolytes, had created something unprecedented, a quantum translation matrix that combined human AI algorithms with Zexarian harmonic principles. "We can use their own temporal attacks to power our response," the engineer explained, her eyes bright with excitement. "The Zexarian harmonics can stabilize the quantum field while our algorithms decode and replicate their communication patterns. We're not just defending anymore, we're learning to speak their language." High Commander Zix's patterns shifted to a deep gold of approval. "To think, days ago we considered your species barely worthy of notice. Now you show us new ways to understand our own heritage." "That's the thing about humanity," Rena smiled. "We're really good at taking different pieces and making something new. Now, let's show these ancients what we can really do together." The next attack came not as a weapon, but as a challenge, a complex series of quantum equations that required both human innovation and Zexarian wisdom to solve. The combined fleet moved as one, their ships arranging themselves in patterns that matched the harmonics of spacetime itself. Dr. Santos and First Sage VYX led their combined teams in a dance of science and ceremony. Human engineers called out calculations while Zexarian priests chanted ancient formulae, creating a symphony of quantum manipulation that even the ancient ships seemed to pause to observe. "Look at these readings," Kai announced, his voice filled with awe. "The space between our fleets, it's not just distorted anymore. We're creating something entirely new. A bridge between different ways of understanding reality." The ancient vessels responded by reconfiguring once again, but this time their pattern seemed less threatening and more appreciative. The living metal of their hulls flowed into shapes that mirrored the combined fleet's formation, creating a vast geometric pattern in space. "They're not our enemies," Rena realized, watching the pattern complete itself. "They're our teachers. And I think we're about to graduate to the next level." High Commander Zix's patterns shifted to a color that had no name in any human language, a shade that somehow conveyed both profound understanding and excited anticipation. "Commander Threll, I believe we are about to discover why our ancestors left us these trials. Shall we proceed together?" As both fleets prepared for whatever revelation awaited them, Rena couldn't help but feel that this was exactly what humanity had come to the stars to find, not just new technologies or species, but new ways of seeing the universe itself. The ancient ships began to move in concert with their combined fleet, and the space between them started to glow with possibilities that neither humans nor Zexarians had ever imagined. The combined fleet hung suspended in a web of quantum energy, their ships arranged in perfect geometric harmony with the ancient vessels. The space between them had become something entirely new, not quite normal space, not quite the void between realities, but a perfect synthesis of both. "Final quantum harmonic stabilizing," Dr. Santos reported, her movements now perfectly synchronized with First Sage VYX's. "Whatever they're trying to show us, we're ready to receive it." Commander Rena Threll watched as the ancient ships began to pulse with a light that seemed to originate from everywhere and nowhere at once. The living metal of their hulls flowed like liquid starlight, forming shapes that told a story older than both their civilizations combined. By the first light, High Commander Zix whispered, their patterns shifting through colors never before seen. They're showing us the beginning. Through the quantum bridge they'd created together, both fleets witnessed visions of a universe far older than they'd imagined. They saw civilizations rise and fall, each one facing the same challenge, the tendency to become isolated, to believe their way was the only way, to treat knowledge as something to be hoarded rather than shared. They're not just ancient vessels, Lieutenant Kai realized, watching the display. They're libraries. Archives of every species that passed their test, that learned to reach beyond their own understanding. The largest of the ancient ships moved to the center of their formation, its living metal surface forming into a vast screen of pure energy. Symbols and equations began to flow across it, a language that combined mathematical precision with harmonic resonance, perfectly understandable to both humans and Zexarians. It's an invitation, Dr. Santos breathed, working with First Sage VYX to decode the message. They're offering to teach us everything. But only if we continue to work together, to combine our ways of thinking. Chief Engineer Rodriguez's voice came through the comm, filled with excitement. Commander, these equations, they're showing us how to transcend our current understanding of physics entirely. The Zexarian harmonics, our quantum technology, they're just the beginning. High Commander Zix's patterns pulsed with a joy that needed no translation. For generations, we thought we were preserving our ancestors' wisdom. Now we understand, we were merely keeping it safe until we found others who could help us see it anew. The ancient ships began to move again, but this time they weren't attacking or testing. They were teaching. Each movement, each pulse of their living metal hulls, conveyed millennia of accumulated knowledge. Human innovation combined with Zexarian wisdom allowed both species to absorb and understand it in ways neither could have managed alone. They're not just giving us technology, Rena observed, watching as her crew worked seamlessly with their Zexarian counterparts. They're showing us a new way forward. A path that requires us to maintain our unique perspectives while learning to see through each other's eyes. The space around both fleets began to ripple with possibility. The quantum bridge they'd created was becoming something more, a permanent connection not just between their ships, but between their ways of understanding the universe. Commander Threll, High Commander Zix said, their patterns now shifting through colors that encompassed both human and Zexarian visual spectrums, I believe this is merely the beginning of a much longer journey. Rena smiled, watching as human engineers and Zexarian priests worked together to implement the ancient ship's teachings, each bringing their own unique strengths to the task. That's the thing about humanity, High Commander. We love long journeys, especially when they lead us to new friends and new understandings. The ancient vessels began to pulse in a rhythm that matched both human heartbeats and Zexarian harmonic patterns. They were no longer separate fleets facing each other across space, they were all students together, learning from teachers who had waited eons for species capable of understanding their lessons. You know, Lieutenant Kai mused, watching the display, when we first encountered the Zexarian fleet, I thought we were in trouble. Now look at us, rewriting the laws of physics together. First Sage VYX's patterns rippled with what could only be described as laughter. And to think, it all started with a quantum harmonics experiment involving a coffee maker. As both fleets prepared to begin their real journey, not just through space, but through levels of understanding they had never dreamed possible, Rena reflected on how far they'd come. From a tense first contact to the brink of transcendent knowledge, all because both species had learned to value what made them different while discovering what made them the same. The ancient ships pulsed one final time, their living metal surfaces forming words in both human and Zexarian languages. The true test was never about power or technology. It was about learning to see the universe through many eyes, to understand that no single perspective holds all truth. You have passed. Now, let us show you what lies beyond. And so, as the combined fleet prepared to embark on an adventure beyond their wildest dreams, they carried with them a truth as old as the stars themselves: the greatest discoveries come not from conquering or competing, but from learning to see wonder through each other's eyes. High Commander Zix turned to Rena, their patterns now perfectly harmonized with the quantum field around them. "Shall we proceed, Commander Threll?" Rena nodded, a smile playing at her lips. "Together, High Commander. Always together." The ancient ships began to move, and both fleets followed, venturing into a future where the boundaries between species, between technology and harmony, between science and wonder, had finally begun to fade.